Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. This week, a Japanese Shinto garden took root in Southwestern Virginia because of family connections spanning geography and generations.
Even though my granny was as Appalachian could be, she and my Japanese aunt connected.
In Whitesburg, Kentucky, a new mosaic uses recovered objects to honor the townspeople after the flood of 2022.
They wanted it to commemorate the flood, but also honor the people here, the grit, the strength.
And the young adult novel Verity Vox and the Curse of Foxfire mixes historical fact with spooky Appalachian folklore.
Many strange visitors came from lands far beyond the horizon to make a new home in those Appalachian hills. Some called your name in the dark, hoping to gobble you up.
You'll hear these stories and more this week inside Appalachia.
Support for Inside Appalachia is provided by the West Virginia Lottery, where your ticket does more than you think. When you play, you help students succeed. Since 1986, $4.1 billion has been generated to fund education. When you play, West Virginia students and partners like West Virginia Public Broadcasting win.
Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. Elk Creek, Virginia is a small, unincorporated community located in Grayson County, about a half hour from the North Carolina border. Many people in Elk Creek have deep ties to their land. And for one family, taking care of their land and honoring their ancestors meant creating a traditional Japanese Shinto garden. From Elk Creek, Folkways reporter Wendy Welch brings us the story.
Oh, my Shinto garden.
That's Amelia Blandwaller, longtime resident of Elk Creek, Virginia, and the owner of the town's only Shinto garden.
I tell people it was like Richard Dreyfuss in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and that scene where he's building something with mashed potatoes. I just had to have it, and the reason why is very deep.
For those unfamiliar, Shinto is Japan's oldest indigenous spiritual tradition, similar to Native American appreciation for the divine in nature. Amelia's Shinto garden is located on the site of a former swamp behind her late grandmother's house. The land has been in the family 8 generations. And when Amelia was young, she thought Granny's homestead was the best place on earth.
As a child growing up in Florida, coming there, I just thought it was a wonderland. And so even though the house was in terrible condition when I inherited it, I had to preserve it. The house is almost 100 years old. It wasn't electrified until after World War II.
After World War II is also when Granny's house acquired one of its most beloved visitors. Her name was Hime. She was a Japanese nurse, and she became Amelia's favorite aunt.
My uncle married a Japanese woman that he met when he was in Japan during World War II, and my granny loved her Japanese daughter-in-law, and my Japanese daughter-in-law loved my granny.
Hime and her husband Gerald were frequent visitors to Granny's place, although they lived in Washington State. Amelia still has the doll they gave her for her first Christmas. She cherishes it, but she cherishes even more memories of time spent with her aunt.
My Aunt Hime, well, I'll use the phrase that was spoken by one of her friends at her funeral. She said if she had to describe Hime in a word, it would be pure. I adored that Hime called Granny Mama. And she did that because she lost her own mother when she was very young, as did my granny. They were both about 10 years old when they lost their mothers.
Hime had no children, so as an adult, Amelia visited Hime several times in her senior years.
And that was what originally had piqued my interest in Japan, was this relationship with my aunt, who, as her dementia advanced, began to lose her ability to communicate in English. So I began learning Japanese while she was still alive. She died at 98 in January 2023.
Amelia traveled to Japan in 2024 to bring her Japanese cousins their inheritance from Hime, and also to connect with them as part of the extended family. It was a delightful experience, she says, not least because she visited the world-famous Kenroku Gardens.
So not only did I get to visit Japan and Kenroku-en, but I had met her family, and I just came back with this profound sense of that part of the home place story was going to be integrating Japanese culture in some way, because even though my granny was as Appalachian could be, she and my Japanese aunt connected.
Amelia felt deep cultural connections of her own after visiting Kenroku.
I just had to do it.
You know, it's all related to kind of the family story, and I play a role in it now. So it, you know, I'm paying tribute to them, but it's my creativity. I had a vision, I had land, and the vision was, in my mind, related to the land. So I installed my vision on family land.
She started by ripping out a chicken coop and draining the swamp water into a pond. Then she put in white flowers, trillium, irises, and others. Next came trees.
She loved cherry trees. And in the cemetery where she's buried, they have a spectacular display at the entrance. And when we would ride by there in the spring, she'd ooh and ah about the cherry trees, which is, you know, the national symbol of Japan.
After the plants were in, Amelia went back to Japan as a language student.
And then on my second trip to Japan, I learned about jizo, which are the little statues that you see often wearing little red hats or bibs that are memorializing children who have died before their parents. And parents and others will keep the little hats fresh and little bibs fresh. And I just thought that was really sweet.
Jizo are also the patrons of travelers. Amelia had turned her grandmother's homestead into an Airbnb called Granny's Place years before. Now she installed Jizo to honor the travelers who stayed there. No Shinto garden could be complete without a torii gate. A torii gate is a large square entrance designed to honor the liminal space between the mundane and the divine.
I came up with this design that I sketched on paper, and I asked my good lifetime evangelical Christian husband if he would help me construct a torii gate. He's sure.
That easy acceptance is part of what Amelia aimed for with the Shinto garden, she says. She wanted it to honor the relationship between two different women united by their love for nature and each other. And she wanted to celebrate the Appalachian respect for land.
I think in some ways we view our land, our inherited land, as somewhat extensions of ourselves and our canvas that on which we can create.
Amelia says guests in the Shinto garden gravitate toward the pond full of goldfish. They sit on the bridge, which delights Amelia. Her husband Jimmy salvaged a massive beam from the homestead's old granary for the bridge base.
I made the garden using what I could salvage from other parts of the history of the place, my personal history, what I know about the property. It's a reminder to me of this Japanese concept of mano aware, which is like the appreciation of the ephemeral. And, you know, a garden teaches you that the plants are always changing through the seasons. Sometimes they grow, sometimes they die.
Families and land are the same, Amelia says. You might feel like they're going to be around forever, but they're not. In the guest materials left at Granny's place, Amelia doesn't mention Aunt Hime. The most common response left in the guest book
is, what a delightful surprise.
Her youngest son, Will, is set to inherit Granny's place someday. He and his wife, Jess, held their wedding there.
He understands the impetus for it and the inspiration for it, and he appreciates it. He knows it adds value to the place. And I'm not talking about merely, dollar value. I'm talking about just the family history woven in.
What would Aunt Hime and Granny have said of the garden, had either of them seen it?
I think Granny would like the pond and the fish in the pond. She would like the use to which the water has been put. Granny was very practical. She valued things for their usefulness.
And Hime?
I think she'd really like the trillium, the white trillium, which are not Japanese but are native Appalachian. She would like those.
But when you venture into the garden, the Shinto garden, you are immersed in nature. People in Appalachia understand that. They sit on their porches to watch the sunset or the clouds move and, to sit beside a little pond and see the goldfish swim. It's just a very calm, peaceful place to sit and watch the fish and listen to the birds. It's just lovely. And I'm really, really glad that I built it.
For Inside Appalachia, I'm Wendy Welch.
That story is part of our Folkways reporting project, which covers arts and culture in our region. You can find more Folkways stories at our website, wvpublic.org. Letcher County, Kentucky artist Lacey Hale is known across Appalachia for her enduring screen print that reads, "No hate in my holler." But Lacey does a lot of public art projects. And so 4 years after the devastating Kentucky floods, she was hired to make a public mosaic that incorporates material contributions from community members. The artwork protects memories, shares stories, and helps the community to heal. From Whitesburg, Teresa Collins has this story.
In front of a concrete retaining wall, amidst piles of broken pottery and glass, Lacey Hale sifts through a plastic bag full of jewelry.
A woman donated this. It was, a box full of buttons and pendants and little gems and stones and doodads of all sorts.
Hale selects several pieces from the bag. She holds each one up to a turtle-shaped outline that's been painted on the wall. She's deciding which jewelry parts will work to make the turtle in this mosaic come to life.
It's like putting a puzzle together all the time. You gotta find the exact piece that's broken the right way to fit next to another piece, and then think about the color scheme of the pieces.
Hale's an artist from Whitesburg. She's spearheading the creation of this public mosaic that's behind the old post office downtown. The mosaic is sponsored by the County Community Action Group in Letcher County. It's part of their annual Growing Home event, which honors the anniversary of the flood of 2022.
They wanted it to commemorate the flood, but also honor the people here, the grit, the strength.
The mosaic is also a celebration of Eastern Kentucky streams, along with the flora and fauna that call them home.
So there's Joe Pyeweed and Black-Eyed Susans and Ghost Pipe and Morels. And then there's a kingfisher, a heron, there's frogs, dragonflies, a little bit of all kinds of things that make this area really lovely.
Hale is no stranger to making public art. She's painted around 20 murals in the region, but this was her first time working in mosaic, so she taught herself the basics, relying on YouTube.
As I was doing research, I realized, you can use rocks, you can use jewelry, you can use broken ceramics.
This research sparked an idea. It reminded her of a mug that belonged to her father. When he passed away in 2008, Hale was given the mug.
And I got that mug and I used that mug and then I broke that mug. So I couldn't bring myself to part with the mug.
So she decided to put it in the mosaic.
And so from that, it kind of grew into, wouldn't it be cool to ask people in the community to bring their own broken treasures?
Hale put the word out on social media, and soon all kinds of people were bringing items to add to the mosaic. People have donated old jewelry, broken pottery that belonged to loved ones, and river glass found after flooding. Not only have people shared physical items, they've shared their stories with Hale too.
It's been a way for me too to learn about people in the community that I might not have been able to meet before.
One person Hale's connected with through the project is Lee Burke. Burke lives in McRoberts alongside a creek. The night of the flood, he was staying next door with his mom. During the night, Burke heard his mom call out.
And she said, "Lee, you better check that creek." And I said, "It's a creek, it ain't going nowhere." And I just like that. It went about 5 minutes and it was still raining. She said, "I'm telling you, you better check that creek." So I got up and looked, and when I looked out that window, it was already a raging river.
As Burke stood with his mom at the back door, he saw his dad's outbuilding float down the raging creek.
It was a big, almost two-story, really. It was a huge, rough lumber building. It had the 100 crates in it and all the pot bottles.
Burke's dad was an avid collector of all things RC Cola. There used to be an RC bottling plant several miles down the road. When Burke's dad was a kid, a cold bowl of RC was a big treat. Over the years, he collected around 100 wooden crates and thousands of glass bottles. That lumber building's where he stored it all.
And he passed away in 2012, and I just kept it all. And I would just open the door sometime, kind of look in at it, and just shut it back, and I just never could do nothing with it.
Burke watched as all those keepsakes were swept downriver with the building. In the days after the floodwaters had subsided, Burke and his brother were driving to the next town over. Something in a debris pile caught Burke's eye.
And I said, "Just stop." And he said, "Why?" I said, "I know that's Dad's RC crate." So we got out, we went across the creek, we dug through all that stuff, and sure enough, it was a red RC crate, and it was still intact.
And so began the hunt for any remaining RC crates and bottles. They started finding them near bridges, in debris piles.
And then a lot of people started hearing about me looking for them, so they started finding them. And they would message and say, "Hey, I've got you this RC crate." Or sometimes I would come home and then they'd just be sitting on the porch.
Out of more than 2,000 bottles in his dad's building, Burke only recovered 2. One was fully intact. The other was broken in half, but still had the RC logo. When he saw Hale's post about the mosaic, he decided to donate the broken bottle.
She was able to actually somehow cut the RC with the glass perfectly and put it into the mosaic.
It makes me kind of want to cry now. I mean, it was just so touching that a piece from his father, he would trust us to use and break and put in this big wall. We were like, we need to put it in a very prominent place. And so the RC Cola bottle, my intern Julian was like, we should put it in the Blue Heron's neck. And so that's what we did.
Burke also donated a mug of his mother's, who passed away in 2024. For him, having his parents' objects in this public artwork is a way of honoring their lives.
They're both gone, and and I'm just like, it's just a little bit of keeping them alive.
Back at the mosaic, Hale's putting the finishing touches on the turtle. She sifts through a pile of orange pottery shards, searching for the right color.
Painting with glass is a little different, so you have to think a little more deliberately about the color changes and the highlights and the shadows.
Hale finds a piece that's the right color, but it's too big. She breaks the shard into smaller pieces with a hammer. Next, she uses a putty knife to scrape a blob of white adhesive onto the back of a piece. Then she places it on the wall, shaping the turtle's head.
It's just an honor that they trust me with the pieces that they bring, and I hope I do them all justice.
The mosaic is like an archive of the community, says Hale. It's a reflection of what they found important and beautiful.
The Whitesburg mosaic was completed and unveiled at the end of July. That story was a collaboration between Mimi Pickering of Appalachia and Teresa Collins of the Center for Rural Strategies. It was produced by Nicole Musgrave. It originally aired on the Rural Remix podcast. Coming up, seeking answers for Appalachia's aging population by studying Japan. You're Inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams.
Support for Inside Appalachia is provided by the Charleston, West Virginia Convention and Visitors Bureau. Spend your summer in Charleston, where scenic trails and on-the-water adventure meet vibrant arts, culture, and local flavor in the capital city. Begin your adventure at charlestonwv.com.
WESA's Designing Dignity series is exploring possible solutions for healthcare challenges created by Pennsylvania's and Appalachia's aging population. Some of these ideas come from Japan, where 1/3 of the population is 65 or older. Japan has implemented a program to keep medical costs down through a taxpayer-funded insurance program specifically for long-term care. Several U.S. states are exploring their own version of universal long-term care insurance. WESA's Kylie Kaczynski reports.
Pittsburgh sisters Elena Gibbs and Dara Thompson have been caregivers for their dad Lloyd for about a decade. A few years ago, he moved into an assisted living facility that provided help with eating, bathing, and medication, but not acute medical care. As his Alzheimer's progressed, they moved him to a memory care facility in the North Hills of Pittsburgh. The bill for Lloyd's meals, room and board is nearly $10,000 per month. Gibbs says her dad's retirement savings and investments cover those costs, but if they didn't have that to rely on,
he would be at home and we would be unemployed. Yeah.
As she plans for her own future, Gibbs is certain she won't be able to afford the type of care her father is getting today.
We will never be able to afford memory care. Unless we hit the lottery. Maybe then.
Gibbs and Thompson aren't alone. A 2022 KFF survey found that the overwhelming majority of adults say that it would be impossible for them to pay the estimated $100,000 needed for 1 year at a nursing home, or the estimated $60,000 for 1 year of assistance from a paid nurse or aide. Medicare, the federal health insurance program for people 65 and older, does not cover long-term care costs for nursing home stays or personal care facilities. Medicaid, the federal program that insures low-income adults, seniors, people with disabilities, and others, does cover nursing home costs, but it does not cover personal care facilities or memory care centers like the one where Lloyd lives. Another way people pay for home health support or living in a personal care home is private long-term care insurance. But according to Allegheny Health Network Geriatrics Division Director, Dr. Lynn Weinberg, not many people carry long-term insurance.
I have so few patients that have long-term care insurance because it's so expensive. Over the years, I've had probably thousands of patients come into my care since 2013. I've maybe had 5 patients who have had a long-term care insurance policy.
And she says those who do buy private insurance often struggle to access their plan's benefits.
The hoops you have to jump through so the long-term care policy will start paying for something. Pages and pages of paperwork that you have to fill out. You basically have to demonstrate that that person is like so sick and you have to prove that they need it. It's insane.
Japan, meanwhile, subsidizes much of the cost of elder care. In addition to its universal basic health insurance, the country implemented a national long-term care insurance program in 2000. To fund the program, Japanese residents over 40 pay monthly premiums determined by their income. The rest is covered by taxes. As a result, most people only pay between 10 and 30% of the cost of care in Japan. Depending on the level of care, that can look like roughly $1,000 to $3,000 a month. That's significantly lower than what it costs in the US. Health officials here are noticing how unaffordable aging has become.
It's an affordability crisis not just for the person who needs care, but for the family caregiver.
That's Ben Vecti. He's the director of Washington's new statewide long-term care insurance program called WaCares. It's the first in the U.S. to subsidize long-term care. The state began collecting a 0.58% payroll tax about 3 years ago. Starting next month, enrollees will begin to access their benefits. Vecti says the support could help more Washingtonians age at home.
WaCares will enable people to get a home care aide to come in 10, 20 hours a week for a year or longer to do that. Another thing you can use it for is to put grab bars in the bathroom. A lot of people, when they become frail, they slip in the shower, break a hip, go to the ER, never come home. They end up going to a nursing home after that.
But the program is small. Benefits max out at $36,500. Vecti says he knows that isn't enough to cover the entire cost of long-term care, But he says the benefit will also change the state's private insurance marketplace.
If you want more insurance, you can buy it in the private market, and this policy should be more affordable than private coverage today because we're covering the first tranche of risk, so the insurers don't have to insure that first 36.5.
Legislation that would have established a statewide subsidized long-term care insurance program in Pennsylvania was introduced as recently as 2023, but the bill died in committee. Today, about a dozen states are exploring their own version of a statewide long-term care benefit program. Vecti knows the spotlight is on Washington as enrollees begin accessing benefits next month. As the nation's population ages, he hopes similar conversations are happening in D.C.
And I wouldn't be surprised if the federal government has this in 20 years because the age wave is such a risk to our economy and to middle-class families. It's such an affordability issue, and it's a basic human dignity issue.
As policymakers and families grapple with who pays for care, another question arises. Who will actually provide it? Workforce shortages are already taxing providers while the demand is only expected to grow. Could robots fill the gaps left by the human labor shortage? And should they? That's next time. From Tokyo and Pittsburgh, I'm Kylie Kaczynski. This series is part of a fellowship with the Association of Healthcare Journalists, supported by the Commonwealth Fund.
One of Virginia's rarest plants, the Peters Mountain mallow, lives on only one mountainside in the world, in the New River Valley along the West Virginia line. Last year, scientists counted just 5 plants that are still alive, and the ongoing drought means protecting it from extinction is getting tougher. Radio IQ's Roxy Todd reports.
On a sultry summer day, I join 3 scientists as we hike up Peters Mountain in Giles County. We climb through sassafras and blackberry bushes and their thorns. Within 15 minutes, we're all sweating.
So we are, a few hundred feet above the New River, climbing up the side of Peters Mountain. And we're about a third of the way up the climb.
Leighton Reed is an associate professor of ecological restoration at Virginia Tech. A half hour later, we reach the top. Here, trees thin out, and there's more sunlight, exactly what Peters Mountain mallow needs to thrive.
So it's got kind of mapley looking leaves. They're a little bit fuzzy. It's got kind of a fuzzy stem.
Reed is crouching in front of a small green plant, one of only a handful that exist on the planet.
This species was discovered by a couple of botanists from West Virginia University almost 100 years ago, and this is the only place that anyone's ever found it.
Peters Mountain mallow can grow to be several feet tall, with light pink flowers that look a bit like hibiscus. But today, all the plants are small, and only one has any sign of a flower, and it's small and shriveled. There's still a lot scientists don't know about what helps these plants thrive. They do know fire helps their seeds germinate. Fire also helps clear the forest of debris to allow more light to shine on the mallows.
If we could provide more sunlight for the species, if we could burn this habitat and allow some of the seeds to germinate, there are probably seeds that are underneath of the leaf litter that could cause the species to rebound again.
The Nature Conservancy in Virginia owns this property, and they began prescribed burns here in the 1990s. The Nature Conservancy's land manager, Sam Truslow, says the last burn was in 2017.
For the past few years, we have had plans each spring to conduct another burn. And this year specifically, the prolonged drought conditions have made that not possible.
It's amazing these plants survived this long, but they almost didn't. In the 1980s, the Peters Mountain mallow was placed on the federal list of endangered species, and the population dropped to just 3 plants. But after prescribed burns, the population usually rebounds quickly. Ryan Clough with the Virginia Natural Heritage Program was at the most recent burn 9 years ago.
Peters Mountain mallow is simply one of, if not the rarest plant in the state. And so protecting and ultimately seeing that species restored through this collaborative effort with agencies, university, NGO is just, mission central.
And there is good news. In addition to the 5 plants they identified last year, Clough spots a small, healthy mallow. Reed says it's a good sign the plant is holding on for now.
6 individuals, which is one more than we found last year. Whether that one was here last year or we missed it, or whether it's a new one is hard to say.
They tag and record the new plant, named 006, and then enclose it with a small fence. After they've logged all the plants, the scientists tidy up their exclosures and nearby areas. Just as a gardener would, they thin some of the competing plants and pull invasives like garlic mustard to give Peter's mountain mallow a fighting chance. Reed and his students are hoping to begin a new phase of the restoration project to collect seeds and try to germinate them in Blacksburg. Eventually, scientists may even try to grow them in new locations to help give the plant more chances to survive.
Because what could be more inspiring than studying the restoration of a globally rare species that occurs only 30 minutes away from the Virginia Tech campus? It's just a great opportunity to be part of global biodiversity conservation in our own backyard.
They're still waiting to learn if they'll be funded for this next part of their work. Either way, Reed hopes conditions improve for a prescribed burn soon, because without that, Virginia's most rare plant has little chance of making a comeback. In Giles County, I'm Roxy Todd.
Tori Mather is the author of Scenic Natural Wonders of Pennsylvania, a new book that introduces readers to some of the state's treasures. The Allegheny Front's Savannah Kohlberg met up with Mather in Pittsburgh's Frick Park to learn more.
Who or what motivated you to write this book?
So I have been someone who has been writing my entire life. I kept a journal like all through elementary school, middle school, high school, and college. And I had a friend write a book in 2023, and seeing her go through that journey really inspired me that I felt like I had a book to give the world to.
What are some of the main things you remember learning about Pennsylvania while writing your book?
I think things that I learned that I didn't know, basically how diverse the landscape is. So like we have mountains, we have wildflower reserves, we have natural areas, we have bogs, we have something called the Serpentine Barrens, which is like this very different type of soil. And so the diversity of ecosystems that are in Pennsylvania, I think even someone who had at the time lived here almost 10 years, like on 2 different sides of the state, like I did not realize how diverse the state was. And so learning about like what endangered species we have, and I have always been an advocate of conservation, and I think it made me even more be like, we have to preserve these places. They are amazing. Like everyone needs to know about all of these things.
How did you decide what locations specifically were worthy to include into your book?
That is a great question. So I wanted to make sure the book had something for everyone. So if anyone across the state bought the book, they could pick it up and be like, oh, there is this place near my house that I can go to. And then I mapped everything out and planned like what I was going to visit. And then I just over the year like visited the place and decided, do I want this in? Do I not want this in? And so slowly over the year, the spreadsheet went from 200 to 150 to 100, and then slowly narrowed it down to the 84. And that was hard. I mean, there are places that I didn't include in the book that I really liked, but I wanted to make sure that I was treating it like almost a balanced portfolio where there is something for everyone. There's something that's wheelchair accessible. There's something that's a 10-mile hike. There's, caves. There's natural areas. If it were, I'd like to joke that like if I wrote this book just for me, it would be 84 waterfalls because that's my favorite thing. So I wanted to include more than that.
What do you want people to take away from this book?
I want people to find a place that they love, a natural place that they love, and I want them to conserve it. I want them to advocate for it with their legislatures. I want them to go volunteer to pick up trash. I want them to tell other people about it and how to be a good steward of that place. I think I'm in my mid-30s and I did not really become outdoorsy until my early 30s. And so learning about outdoor spaces has made me so much more vehemently, I want to make sure these places exist for the future, and I want to make sure my nephews get to explore the same places in the same manner that I got to. And I think there are a lot of threats out there right now to some of our natural places in Pennsylvania, so just making sure people are paying attention, willing to put in the work to keep these places the way they are.
That was the Allegheny Front's Savannah Kohlberg, speaking with author Tori Mather. In July, Roanoke, Virginia hosted USA Cycling's Endurance Mountain Bike National Championships. For local mountain bikers, it was just the latest summit in a decades-long uphill grind for respectability. Kyle Inman's road to mountain biking began with the dirt bike craze of the 1970s. He moved to Roanoke in 1983 and opened a skateboard shop. And when mountain bikes started to emerge, he was primed and ready. But he didn't know where to ride.
When I bought the first bike, I said, well, where do you ride them? Because they were selling like hotcakes. Nobody knew where to go.
He and others were directed to Carvin's Cove, which at the time didn't technically allow mountain biking. That didn't stop Inman and others, who painstakingly mapped out trails left by loggers and the Civilian Conservation Corps.
There was no awareness of what was up on Brushy Mountain, the CCC trails. We just, by virtue of exploration, discovered that. Met a guy here or there and said, yeah, I know about something over here. I remember somebody talking about something over there. Got the USGS topos. Through that, we discovered an old dotted line that I said, I wonder if that's a trail. Well, it turned out it became Heidi-Ho.
In 1997, Inman pitched an idea to the city of Roanoke: host a sanctioned American Mountain Bike Championship event out at Carvin's Cove. The city balked, but the resulting publicity made local riders aware of the trails at Carvin's Cove.
Suddenly, it revealed to a lot of people that you could mountain bike at the Cove, and they didn't realize that there was this stuff out there. And so that's when it really started taking off in terms of the ridership.
Wesley Best was one of the 2 mountain bikers appointed to a committee to study whether to open up Carvin's Cove to mountain bikes.
There were 7 of us, and at the outset, the other 5 people were 100% against this. They thought it was a terrible idea, like this, why would we do this? It's our water supply. Basically, it was once we went to Carvin's Cove and they saw what was there, because nobody understood what it was. They didn't realize there were all these existing trails and all of this stuff. Once that happened, the tide turned. And so all of a sudden it went from, 5 out of 7 being against this concept to basically being 7 out of 7 for it.
The opening of Carvin's Cove, along with the development of trails at Explorer Park, marked the official sanctioning of mountain biking in the Roanoke Valley. The embrace has only tightened over the ensuing decades. Tourism and economic development officials make it a focal point when marketing the area to visitors and businesses. Here's Best again.
All of a sudden, it's not just the mountain bikers who are paying attention. It is people at higher levels that are starting to pay attention to this as an opportunity for us to tell a story that very few places can tell. You can have a technology corridor. You can have all of these other things that everybody loves to play up that they are. But when you have this, that's a quality of life issue that you can't create.
Visit Virginia's Blue Ridge, the regional tourism agency, even sponsored a professional women's cycling team. Nicola Cranmer is founder and general manager of the UCI Virginia's Blue Ridge 2028 Bro Cycling Team.
Here you have this team that travels all around the country, and if the title sponsorship is a Visit Virginia's Blue Ridge, how cool is that for them to be traveling around as ambassadors for our region, and particularly a high-performance women's cycling team?
During Championship Race Week, more than 2,400 riders descended on the Roanoke Valley to race in 3 events of varying lengths. Even days before the event began, riders were already arriving and had packed out Carvin's Cove's Bennett Springs parking lot. Christina Goki-Smith traveled from Denton, Texas to represent the team she founded, the all-female impact racing team. She'd stepped away from the sport a few years ago, but
you can't really retire. This is just a sport for life and longevity.
Alfonso Hecht, originally from Mexico, came to Roanoke from Greensburg, Kentucky. He was racing as an amateur, but hoped to finish well enough to move up to pro.
My background is downhill, so I like hitting big stuff and jumps and going fast.
That's the same kind of thrill that attracted those early mountain bikers. For Inside Appalachia, I'm Mason Adams in Roanoke, Virginia. The young adult novel Verity Vox and the Curse of Foxfire tells the story of a witch in training who uses her magic to help a forgotten mountain coal town. The book blends fantasy and Appalachian social history with a touch of queer romance. It's the debut novel by Don Martin, and it was an instant New York Times bestseller. Inside Appalachia producer Bill Lynch spoke with Martin about the book and his podcast, Head on Fire. Martin started by reading from the book's prologue.
A man comes to town. In the heart of a valley, at the base of a mountain, there is a town you can only access by an old swinging bridge made of wood and rope. The town was built up by a coal mining company drawn to the area by the riches they thought they'd find underneath the soil. Once they'd extracted everything they could grab and then some, they moved on to other mines and other hills, leaving this one and its people behind. But they were not alone. For you see, the mining company had not been the only thing drawn to that mountain and the marvels lying in wait underneath. These mountains were old, very old. They were formed before all the oceans had settled into their places. They erupted from the ground before life took its first steps. They gazed up at the stars for eons before the first plant took root. All that age and time held something, or possibly held something back. All that digging around in the dirt drew attention to what had been locked away and the power it held. Many strange visitors came from lands far beyond the horizon to make a new home in those Appalachian hills. Some had big teeth. Some had big eyes. Some called your name in the dark, hoping to gobble you up. One of those things looked like a salesman, wearing a slick striped suit, driving a red wagon. The salesman had been to many towns in many lands and called many names. Here, he called himself Earl. He sold many practical things that brought a kind of ease and prosperity to the abandoned town. He only charged a penny each. Had the people been wiser, they would have asked how he could sell such fine things for so little, but when you have nothing to begin with, you don't ask inconvenient questions. Soon, though, the salesman offered other deals. Fair weather in exchange for your ability to see the color blue. A full head of hair for the lyrics to your favorite song. Your child's middle name might get you a healthy cow. He didn't just heal your livestock, he could heal you too. Your aching back and burning lungs from years toiling in the mine might be soothed by your ability to dive underwater or feel the heat of the sun in winter. This was all fine until winter came and a girl got sick and her father begged for a miracle. The cost was steep, but the man agreed to it. When the girl died anyway, and Earl still came to collect, well, that didn't sit right with folks. They ran him out of town. He escaped into the hills, searching for the power held under the mountain to claim for himself, vowing revenge for their broken contracts. Revenge he got. One day, not long after the salesman's departure, their bridge was destroyed, trapping them in their valley. Any attempts to rebuild it found the wood crumbling to rot. Food spoiled, animals got sick, the very land itself was cursed. Nothing much grew, and what did was scarcely enough to keep people alive. Eventually, desperate souls ventured off into the mountain in search of food or freedom. The few who returned whispered that among the horrors living in the hills, they'd met Earl, who looked less and less like the salesman that had arrived in the red wagon. He called himself King of the Mountain and still offered deals. Stale bread for your health, withered vegetables for your vitality. You wouldn't starve, but you wouldn't live either. This became the life of the people in the valley. No way in, no way out. A monster watching their every move, lying in wait to bargain away what little joy they had left. Days became weeks, became seasons, until those who'd been small children when the salesman arrived were now adults who had never known anything other than the purgatory in which they found themselves. It seemed things would never change for the better, until a girl asked for help, and a witch came to town.
That is awesome.
Thanks. I'm rather proud of it.
Tell me about the book.
Verity Vox and the Curse of Foxfire, I like to say, is Foxfire, the setting of the book, is not a real place, but it's based on a real place. It's based on Vulcan, West Virginia, which I was just there a few months ago when the book launched. When I first heard the story about Vulcan and this town in a mountain that you could only reach by a bridge, and one day the bridge goes out, and oh God, what happens? And they try to get help, and nobody wants to help them. I thought somebody somewhere needs to turn that into a novel. That's a good story. That's a good one. And years and years and years later, I had to ask, if it was a novel, why can't they get out? Okay, well, they can't get out and they're trapped. And why? And what's keeping them there? And who saves them? And how do they get out? And da-da-da-da. And, once I had all those pieces together, I thought, well, I guess I better write that book.
You're a podcaster. You predate, a lot of podcasting started later during COVID. So you predated, you were ahead of the curve.
By a lot. Yeah. I started a podcast back when it was like a joke. One of those things that you did, like, you do a podcast? You must do that in somebody's basement. It's the weird thing that weird people do in a basement. I host a podcast called Head on Fire, which I produce myself. I like to say that I talk to experts in overlooked or misunderstood fields. I have a deep and abiding love for people who have these like deep wells of knowledge in areas of life that you don't think about. That you just kind of assume that somebody somewhere does as a job, and like you don't think of the person that does that job, or like the jobs that you just kind of assume you know everything about, but we're all wrong about. I love those. I also have a fascination with people who can walk down the street and they're nobody, but if you get into one particular room, like there is this one Holiday Inn Express that gets crowded, once every March or something. And that person walks in, and that is the most famous human being on the planet to the 12 people in that room. I love those people. I'm kind of obsessed with that kind of fame, like that very niche down fame. So the podcast is me talking to those people. And it's been really, really, really cool. I can't imagine another world in which I get to interview Pulitzer Prize winners and like diamond, platinum selling singer-songwriters and mycologists, all sorts of people who are doing these utterly fascinating jobs. And I talk to them.
Well, obviously, when you get to platinum and, diamond selling records, you're no longer niche exactly.
You say that, but the thing is, we know the people behind the microphone, but do you know the people behind the words? And very often the answer is no. So like the person I'm referencing is a singer-songwriter by the name of Bonnie McKee, who is very famous to the people who know who Bonnie McKee is. Like me, I discovered Bonnie McKee when I was going to Marshall University in, Huntington, West Virginia, when I was going to school, freshman year of college. And she put out her little debut album. And I think it like utterly and completely bombed. And I think it sold like, 12 records and I owned all of them. She went on to write almost the entirety of Katy Perry's like big breakout Teenage Dream. She went on to write songs for Britney Spears and Kelly Clarkson and Kesha and all these people. And like, she's somebody that unless you really know who she is, she can kind of just walk down the street. Does everybody in the world know her? No, but everybody in the world knows her songs. And I don't know where that comes from other than I was just a really curious, very imaginative child. I remember telling people I would read the encyclopedia growing up just because I just really loved the idea of how much there is to know in the world. That love continued on into adulthood. I kind of like knowing how much there is to know in the world and being humbled at the distance between what I think I know and how much there actually is out there. It's a good reminder of your place in the world.
Don, thank you very much. Your book's been a pleasure. And
thank you.
It's been lovely talking with you.
Thank you so much.
Verity Vox and the Curse of Foxfire is out now. The next volume is due out in March 2027. On this show, we often think about ways to define our region, to challenge assumptions, and to appreciate it. We want to hear how you're thinking about our region too. So as we go about our reporting, we've been asking, what is Appalachia to you? It's a simple question with many different answers. At Floyd Fest in Virginia this summer, producer Bill Lynch spoke with 36-year-old Amy Knoll, who lives in Asheville, and asked her what it means to be Appalachian.
Do you think of yourself as being Appalachian?
I do. Yes, I do. I've been in North Carolina for 18 years and don't plan to go anywhere.
Where were you from originally?
Actually came from Texas.
Texas?
So, yep, outside of San Antonio, up in the hill country.
There you go. So what does Appalachia mean to you?
I think for me it's more of a sense of community and just the fact that people are looking out for each other, in a different way that you don't get outside of this region. I feel like I've traveled a lot and been to a lot of places, and there's just something that feels like it's a strange blend of independence and dependence at the same time. Just kind of if there's a way to figure it out, we're going to figure it out. And I think it's a mix of a lot of different things, but that's kind of what I think about.
Okay. Do you think your life is different do you think the lives of Appalachians are different than the lives of other Americans?
I do to some degree. I think regionally it's just a very interesting landscape overall because it's more localized. It's harder to get from point A to point B, and so your community tends to be a little bit more around where you're living and working, and whereas I have friends that live in communities where they've got friends that are an hour away that they're like, oh yeah, just down the road. And I feel like when you're in Appalachia, it's just a more localized region, and so there's just more opportunity to kind of dig deep with the people who are immediately around you.
Very cool. What do you wish people outside of Appalachia knew about Appalachia?
There's some of the kindest, hardworking folks that I've ever known in my entire life, and all 36 years of it. And I think anybody that I ever meet seems very willing to help and is welcoming. Can be suspicious of outsiders, but overall, I think, I think that's kind of what I think of when I think of us folks here in Appalachia.
Thanks, Amy. You can tell us what you think, too. Drop us a line. Our email address is in the credits. Till next time, thanks for joining us as we journey throughout Appalachia. Our theme music is by Matt Jackford. Other music this week was provided by Blue Dot Sessions, Jeff Ellis, Dinosaur Burps, and Hello June. Bill Lynch is our producer. Abby Neff is our associate producer. Our executive producer is Eric Douglas. Irina Zhorov is our editor. Our audio mixer is Patrick Stevens. We had help this week from Folkways editor Allison Silverstein. You can find us on Instagram @InAppalachia. You can also send us an email to insideappalachia@wvpublic.org. Visit wvpublic.org/InsideAppalachia to subscribe to our newsletter and stream all of our stories. Or look for Inside Appalachia on your favorite podcast app. Inside Appalachia is a production of West Virginia Public Broadcasting.